Okey, Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera saya ucapkan kepada pendengar semua. Kembali lagi untuk sesi ketujuh Tanya Telenisa pada hari ini yang bertajuk Belia dan Demokrasi. Untuk pengetahuan pendengar-pendengar semua, Tanya Telenisa mengadakan sesi ini untuk memberikan peluang dan ruang kepada beliau untuk memberikan pandangan dan kongsikan apakah yang mereka fikir tentang tajuk demokrasi. Seperti mana yang kita tahu, demokrasi merujuk kepada satu sistem kerajaan di mana rakyat dibenarkan untuk menyertai proses pengumpulan undang-undang. Di manakala di Malaysia mengamalkan sistem demokrasi perwakilan di mana rakyat memilih seorang wakil dan wakil mereka akan menyuarakan kebimbangan dan memperjuangkan hak mereka. Okey, seperti yang dilaporkan oleh akhbar berita harian melalui susulan undi 18 yang telah berkuat kuasa, melalui hak mengundi tersebut telah mencatat peningkatan sebanyak 28% dengan penambahan hampir 750,000 pengundi yang berusia 18 tahun ke atas daripada 22.6 juta pengundi. Tambahan pula, belia yang berusia di antara 21 tahun hingga 40 tahun pada 2020 telah berjumlah sebanyak 6.2 juta orang, iaitu sebanyak 40.8% daripada 15.3 juta pengundi yang mendaftar. Justru itu, pembabituan anak muda dan belia yang dilihat semakin meningkat dalam dunia demokrasi ini adalah satu petanda positif. Tanpa melengahkan masa, saya ingin memperkenalkan narasumber kami pada hari ini, iaitu Cik Tyra Hanim, merupakan naib ketua Angkatan Muda Keadilan untuk Parti Keadilan Rakyat. Kedua, Encik Jit Lee, merupakan seorang aktivis dan pengasas SUARA di mana SUARA merupakan satu inisiatif advokasi yang membincangkan hak isu global. Okey, boleh saya teruskan dengan soalan pertama saya. Okey, pada pendapat Encik Jit Lee, apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan demokrasi?
Okay, terima kasih. I think I'll just get to it lah. Essentially, it's straightforward kan. So, if kita memecahkan perkataan demokrasi ni, actually it's from a Greek word, iaitu demos dengan kratos, which means rakyat dengan kuasa. And that essentially means the power of the people kan. Tapi apakah kuasa yang kita maksudkan ni? Like, where does it come from? Siapakah rakyat? Dan saya berpendapat bahawa inilah soalan yang penting dalam memahami maksud demokrasi dalam zaman ni, juga maksud demokrasi kepada diri kita sendiri. So, but I feel that ramai orang beranggapan bahawa demokrasi bermakna hak anda untuk membuang undi saja. Dan juga dalam pemilihan pemimpin anda. However, berdasarkan peristiwa beberapa tahun kebelakangan ni, it doesn't feel like this is enough lah. Kita tidak boleh lagi bergantung kepada undi saja. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Voting is important. Tapi ia hanya salah satu usaha je lah untuk menghidupkan konsep demokrasi. So saya fikir kita perlu sedar bahawa kuasa rakyat ni, demos dengan kratos, ia meresap setiap bahagian dalam kehidupan kita. Kuasa kepada rakyat adalah it's a capacity to do something. Itu keupayaan untuk rakyat melaksanakan pilihan, untuk menggerakkan advokasi, untuk mendidik dan untuk memperkasakan. And kita perlu berfikir lebih besar daripada pilihan raya sajalah. So I think that's what democracy means to me lah. It's the capacity to do something, itu keupayaan untuk melakukan sesuatu dan untuk mengubahkan sesuatu.
Okay, thank you so much Encik Jit Lee for the sharing. Cik Tyra, apakah yang dimaksudkan dengan demokrasi pada pandangan Cik Tyra?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera saya ucapkan kepada semua. Terima kasih yang pertamanya saya nak ucap kepada Telenisa dan Sister Islam kerana sudi menjemput saya pada hari ini. Dan juga untuk saudara Jit Lee kerana bersama-sama pada hari ini. Jadi untuk soalan yang pertama, apakah demokrasi? Tadi saudara Jit Lee sudah bercakap lah dari segi konseptualnya. Saya cuma nak sambung lah kita punya apa orang panggil permulaan daripada itu kan. Demokrasi bagi saya adalah tentang pilihan dan partisipasi lah. Jadi saya boleh bersetuju bahawasanya demokrasi is about power to the people kan. Dan ya memang betul demokrasi, kalau kita tengok diskurs demokrasi ini sentiasa berada dalam ruang lingkup tentang polling station ataupun pilihan raya saja. Saya rasa macam mana kita punya diskurs demokrasi itu telah degenerate ataupun regress ke belakang, yang mana bila kita fikir pasal demokrasi, it's always about like electing leaders at the state level, at the national level. Saya rasa perkara itu tidak harus terhenti setakat itu. Kalau kita pergi on the more onto the surface level tentang demokrasi, bagi saya adalah ianya tentang membuat an informed choice ataupun pilihan yang betul-betul merupakan pilihan, bukannya pilihan yang kena hadap kita sebagai rakyat biasa, orang biasa, masyarakat yang kena hadap. It's between Pepsi or Cola. Saya rasa kita kena perlu faham tentang benda itu ataupun tentang memilih choosing a lesser of two evils ataupun kejahatan mana yang lebih kecil. Saya rasa demokrasi tak harus jadi seperti itu. Dan macam how sad and how democracy has been regressing over the past years, doesn't matter if it's in the world or in Malaysia itself, kan, sampai ada banyak meme dan banyaklah orang yang sentiasa apa orang panggil more political ataupun skeptik dengan demokrasi ni, sebab orang fikir macam doesn't matter whoever you elect, you either go into the kandang harimau ataupun kandang singa kan. Jadi saya rasa demokrasi is a civil right ataupun civic rights, tapi for me, of which something yang I nak bercakap juga pada hari ini adalah it's not just about civic rights, tapi ia juga harus kepada economic rights ataupun civil versus economic liberties yang saya akan cuba ulas by the time goes in this talk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much Cik Tyra for your sharing. So boleh tak Cik Tyra kongsikan dengan kami pelibatan puan dalam dunia demokrasi secara langsung atau secara tidak langsung?
Saya tahu benda tu macam lawak sikit kan bila saya cakap pasal Pepsi ataupun Cola ataupun demokrasi ni tidak sepatutnya kita memilih kejahatan yang kurang ataupun between choosing a lesser of two evils, considering saya pun apa orang panggil daripada from a political party itself, tapi itu adalah aspirasi saya sebagai anak muda lah juga kan, sebagai belia. So kalau nak kongsi tentang penglibatan saya dalam the so-called dunia demokrasi sounds funny actually, but saya mula sebagai student activist lah. Di masa tu saya berada di Universiti Sains Islam Malaysia and I was a debater, dan masa tu saya rasa ianya timbul daripada mengenali ataupun mengenal pasti masalah dan isu dalam konteks mahasiswa itu sendiri. Dan melalui penglibatan saya dalam apa orang panggil dunia aktivism, doesn't matter if it's a political or intellectual activism. For me, I sort of like differentiate between a political or intellectual activism because it's so different. I mean at least for me lah kan. So saya terlibat dengan buku jalanan Salam, kawan-kawan macam Zikri Rahman, Abu dan sebagainya. Islamic Renaissance Front, pergi program kan, sebab ini adalah program yang untuk mencerahkan minda dan memberi apa orang panggil exposure lah kepada kita. Dan pada masa tu saya terlibat dengan perkara-perkara ni semua sebab dekat universiti tak ada diskurs macam ni, tak ada diskurs yang kritikal macam ni. I have to go outside and educate myself. So saya juga terlibat dengan sekolah politik, sekolah demokrasi, anak muda harapan Malaysia demi rakyat dan sebagainya. But what I'm trying to tell you is that I didn't start off with being partisan. Yes, I probably have some friends from political parties at that point of time, but I was always critical of political parties. Dan kalau rakan-rakan berminat untuk baca, saya juga pernah tulis satu esei, artikel, it's titled Gerakan Mahasiswa dan Kuda Tunggangan Parti. I was always critical macam mana Belia ni kalau ada pun gerakan mahasiswa di peringkat universiti, it's always partisan, tak kisahlah you gamis ke, and I'm still critical of having all those mahasiswa-mahasiswa ni ataupun gerakan Belia yang ada connection ni dengan political party, sebab saya sentiasa percaya ini adalah brainwash, tak adalah brainwash tapi this is a lesson lah yang I learned from Fahmi Reza kan dalam tahun 1970. Kalau kita tengok gerakan mahasiswa, it starts from your own conscious ataupun daripada you punya struggle yourself. It doesn't have to be populist. And mahasiswa, apa orang panggil, representasi rakyat dan sebagainya, saya rasa saya sentiasa inspire dengan perkara-perkara begitulah. Dan I think that's basically how I started to join into political and intellectual activism. And I only join political party recently, only after I think I'm ready to join political parties. Macam itulah lebih kurang.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much for sharing your session, Cik Tyra. So it was interesting you aspire to be you get aspire from joining this outside course that your university did not offer at that time.
Yes.
Okay, alright. Encik Jit Lee, boleh kongsikan dengan pendengar-pendengar what is your involvement dan pelibatan dalam Belia Demokrasi?
Okay, yeah, sure. Jika ingin kongsi tentang penglibatan saya dalam dunia demokrasi, I agree with Tyra. Dunia demokrasi sounds funny, yeah. Yeah. But saya rasa dunia demokrasi dan civic engagement ni memerlukan lebih ramai storytellers, like pencerita. So dalam penglibatan saya sebelum ni dengan the Undi 18 movement dan pergerakan belia lain, such as even with the Center of Independent Journalism, which is involved in a lot of monitoring and critiquing actors in the political world. Saya sentiasa pun cuba menggunakan medium-medium yang berbeza untuk to tell a story, essentially, to illustrate a point, to inform, untuk menyoal siasat, untuk mengkritik. So my biggest example, sebagai contoh, adalah projek SUARA saya, which you can visit if you go to @SUARA_my, @SUARA SUARA_my on Instagram and on Twitter. And SUARA stands for Speak, Uplift, Advocate, Respond, and Act, all of which we try to do. And it aims to go beyond spreading awareness, going beyond spreading awareness. Tetapi kita nak menggunakan penyelidikan dan seni hand in hand untuk mengajar orang ramai mencabar status quo dan berfikir secara kritis. And I think that's the most important thing for anyone trying to or interested in tackling any political issue or even being involved in politics, is to actually challenging the status quo and to think in that critical way. So I think it's also important that for us untuk kita untuk menerokai penceritaan interaktif dan partisipatif sekitar politik, because it celebrates creativity, it celebrates agency, and it celebrates action, and that's not very common in our political world nowadays. So yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, just an additional question for Mr. Jit Lee. What inspired you to create SUARA? Where did you arrive the idea of SUARA?
Right. So SUARA actually, to be honest, it started when I was still in university, and kita orang kat university kita perlu buat tu MPU kan, ada banyak MPU subjects you cannot skip out. And during one of these MPU subjects, we had to actually look at some of our social issues and see how we needed, and we had a lot of discussions surrounding that. And that's where I had the idea. And in looking at a lot of these groups and pages out there, I was sick and tired of seeing this idea of spreading awareness being the main reason people are putting out things like infographics or videos. Spreading awareness seemed to have been the main idea. Aku letih tau melihat halaman advokasi mengulangi message yang sama, just spreading awareness. But I mean, I agree, kesedaran ini penting. Tapi setengah topik memerlukan lebih daripada kesedaran. For example, kita semua tahu bahawa we shouldn't be racist. For example, kita sepatutnya tidak bersikap perkauman. Tapi what happens when there is this intersection, the intersection persimpangan dengan kaum, maybe kemiskinan, and maybe even with jenayah. So when that intersection happens, apa yang berlaku apabila polis memprofilkan rakyat secara berkauman, or they disproportionately detain a certain race, and it ends up not being just a social issue, it is also very inherently political. Dan ia memerlukan nuansa dalam memahaminya. It's no longer just about, hey, look, this is what happened. Inilah perkara yang berlaku, inilah peristiwa yang telah berlaku, which is what a lot of people are doing when they are talking about these things. This is what happened. But sebaliknya, we should be talking about inilah peristiwa yang berlaku, mengapa ia berlaku, dan apa yang boleh kita lakukan mengenainya. What can we do about it? What's next? I think in terms of advocacy, in terms of political involvement, this is really what was lacking, especially within like the social media sphere. And itulah sebabnya saya mulakan SUARA. Saya mahu menggunakan penyelidikan dan seni, as I keep saying, these things need to go hand in hand to tell stories. And the misinya adalah untuk mencabar Belia Malaysia untuk melihat ke dalam ketidakadilan dan penindasan setiap hari di dunia di bawah lensa intersectional lens, an intersectional and analytical lens. And the vision is to see Malaysia at some point having this sort of equality, the kesaksamaan tanpa mengira kaum, umur, agama, jantina, dan orientasi seksual. I mean, that's like the utopian dream lah, right? Itulah satu proses yang panjang. And right now, I'm essentially a one-man team when it comes to SUARA. Tapi we all know that perubahan adalah proses yang panjang, and we just gotta stick with it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I totally agree with your point when you say that there's a lot of this awareness campaign that that was put out in social media, but I think what you have mentioned, they fail to they are aware, but sometimes they're not informed. Sometimes they just say, okay, right now this is what happening, but they don't know why is this happening and what are the factors contributing to these certain things happen. So I think it's very important to let them aware about the issue, to inform them why is this happening, and to be what are the action can be taken or things that can do based on these issues, what they can do
Exactly.
to make changes. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. Okay, so when we talk about peranan Belia punya participations in democracy, what okay, so what are your observations on pernyataan Belia in your organisation? Okay, just a little bit additional. Before Sheraton move and after the Sheraton move, boleh Cik Tyra kongsikan?
Okay, so soalan dia adalah pemerhatian saya tentang penyertaan Belia dalam organisasi before and after Sheraton move, Hello?
Ya, betul.
Okay, so I think I don't know why Sheraton move is the benchmark, but generally rasanya kalau di peringkat keadilan itu sendiri, kita ada lebih kurang 15% golongan belia di bawah 35 tahun di peringkat AMK ataupun ahli-ahli muda Angkatan Belia. Sama ada di AMK ataupun di peringkat Seri Kandi juga. Jadi saya rasa macam ni lah penyertaan belia dalam organisasi, macam saya cakap tadi, civil ataupun civil liberties versus economic liberties kan. Saya rasa kalau dalam politics ni ataupun dalam demokrasi ni, there's only to a certain extent belia ni sebenarnya boleh join. Tak semua orang ada understanding, tak semua orang ada luxury dan tak semua orang ada privilege untuk join politik before or after Sheraton move. I mean, because I want to talk about something much more fundamental here. The privilege ataupun kekangan and challenges for one person to be actively involved in political parties. So jadi bagi pemerhatian saya, kalau misalnya belia yang terlibat aktif dalam politiknya, sama ada mereka ni bekerja dalam politik, tak kisahlah sama ada di peringkat negeri ke, parlimen ke, DUN dan sebagainya, ataupun mereka kerja dengan ahli-ahli politik, so dengan secara tidak langsung mereka terlibat dengan aktif lah. Dan juga kalau misalnya di peringkat macam Jit sebut tadi, intersectionality pula kan. Kalau di peringkat AMK, kita dapat lihat macam lelaki lebih ramai berbanding perempuan, because I believe that when it comes to intersectionality, women have like a lot less privilege, space to join and be actively involved in politics, due to being a mother and the cultural and systemic discrimination as well, and having to break certain ceilings, so on and so forth. Jadi basically that's how I observe macam mana penyertaan belia dalam organisasi saya, dalam Parti Keadilan. Tapi when it comes to Sheraton move, macam lebih banyak lah dia decline kan. Obviously orang lebih berminat dengan parti-parti macam Keadilan di AP dan Amanah sebagainya after they won at the federal level. So lebih banyak orang join, jadi ahli dan sebagainya. Tapi bila Sheraton move, lost power pun, the decline tu memang ada. Penyertaan parti dan penyertaan aktif involvement. Kalau saya sikit lah saya nak share berbanding pemilihan pada tahun 2018 when we just won the government, when the party just won in election, dan berbanding dengan pemilihan pada kali ini tahun 2022. Kalau sebelum ni penjuru, tak kisahlah sama ada ketua cabang dan sebagainya, sampai 7-8 penjuru orang nak rebut nak jadi ketua cabang so that they will have more chance untuk jadi calon dan sebagainya, dan itu berlaku juga di peringkat belia dan sebagainya. Dan kalau berbanding sekarang ini, lebih kurang orang untuk menyertai pemilihan, because who wants to be in a losing ataupun considered parti yang tak ada jawatan di peringkat kerajaan. So I think that's basically my observation kalau misalnya we want to talk about Sheraton move pre and post. Tapi generallynya pasal isu fundamental ni tidak boleh dinafikan bahawasanya saya rasa sekarang anak muda di mana-mana pun lah lebih sibuk cuba untuk float their daily life survival ataupun their livelihood. So again, if you have, or one way or another, if you are in this, I think you are privileged and you have the moral obligation to speak for the voiceless lah. So basically that's how my observation lah, Syafiqah. Thank you.
Alright, thank you so much, Cik Tara. For Cik Lee, Jit Lee, do you have anything to share? It doesn't have to be in your organization, but you can share with us your general perspective of view of the penyertaan belia in political parties or especially in social media punya awareness punya campaign about democracy.
Yes, definitely. I do agree with some points Tyra brought up, and I think yang penting tu we always talk about this thing called political apathy kan. And I think it's easy to say, amat mudah untuk mengatakan bahawa belia semakin tidak peduli terhadap politik, or lebih tepatnya terhadap retorik dan sentimen yang berulang-ulang yang dilontarkan dalam penglibatan politik, particularly on social media. And it's easy to say that this apathy is dangerous, or that the youth need to rethink this apathy. But I think we need to sort of turn this sort of thinking on its head, because what Tyra mentioned, the sort of privilege that comes with being able to be involved in politics, or even to engage with parties, because just thinking that the youth are not being involved because they are apathetic towards politics, ia mengabaikan halangan struktur dan organisasi terhadap penyertaan demokrasi yang dihadapi oleh golongan muda. Ia mengabaikan ketidakpercayaan belia terhadap institusi tadbir urus tradisional. So we can, for example, we cannot ignore that AUKU, the Akta University dan College University, it had a lasting effect on political involvement for many years for students. You cannot deny this lasting effect. And not just that, the widespread the widespread gerrymandering, the malapportionment, all these are problems that devalues our votes. So we cannot really just say that, oh, the youth are apathetic towards politics, and that's the problem we have. However, apa yang saya perhatikan sebenarnya adalah lebih ramai belia yang mereka sedang aktif menerka proses pentadbiran alternatif, atau proses pilihan raya yang berbeza, proses demokrasi yang baru. More youth are advocating, more youth are organizing. For example, the Women's Day, not Women's Day, Women's March event that happened this year, or entirely youth-led, and lots of other this sort of movements towards reform, towards democratic movements, all have been youth-led in the past few years. So oleh itu kita perlu berhenti menyebarkan idea bahawa golongan muda tidak berminat dalam politik. And I think even Miss Tyra here is an example of someone who is being active, who's actively pursuing something like this. And another thing that sort of halted a lot of involvement of youth in politics is the whole idea that it's a grown-up thing to do, that politik dianggap sebagai urusan orang dewasa saja. And if we keep having this mindset, how can we expect the youth to rise up? If the adults keep telling youth that, you know, this is just an adult affair, the youth wouldn't be interested. And that's all the results of a lack of investment in the youth. Because kita sentiasa mengatakan bahawa belia adalah masa depan negara Malaysia, kan? Tapi tiada wujudnya usaha untuk melabur dalam masa depan kalangan muda ni. And besides that, also that's the point of that Tyra brought up of privilege, where poverty, where denied access to education, pelbagai bentuk diskriminasi dan peluang terhad, mereka adalah dan masih terus menjadi faktor kepada kekurangan penglibatan belia. We see this all the time. I mean, we see this in the way younger politicians are treated in parliament. We see this in the opposition towards the Undi 18 bill itself. We see it in the way the authorities treat young people. I think it's a sort of culture that pervades, that comes from everywhere, that now we're seeing the results of. Seorang belia tidak akan berminat dengan penyertaan politik atau seumpamanya jika matlamat utama setiap hari adalah untuk terus hidup saja. If all they need all they have to do in a day, or all they can do in a day, is just to find ways to survive. How are they gonna have the time to even think about being involved in something like this? So it's just really very much that systemic issue that we're dealing with here.
Okay, thank you so much, Encik Jit. I think in terms of privilege that Cik Tyra has mentioned is very, very true with the, I think with the additional effect ataupun external factor iaitu ekonomi sepertinya the cost of rising living, kos sara hidup yang tinggi. We see that our students who was recently detained, they were doing some sort of I think parade dekat pasar seni tu, they were detained because they were just speaking about their struggles. So I think that's one of the things yang it's it's really ignorant to say that the Belia does not interested in politics. I mean, Belias are the one who always speaks this out about issues, and then oftentimes they are the group of people who always been bukan punished tapi dia ditarget oleh a certain for certain government agency because speaking out about a certain issue. And I think the fact one of the factors that you have mentioned is when the bila bercakap tentang politik atau demokrasi ini is such a grown up thing, whereby it's such a very there's certain narrative that saying that you're too young to be involved in politics. Age and experience is not is a two different thing. Someone who is young have a lot experience kalau dibandingkan dengan who is mungkin orang tu lebih tua tapi experience orang tu berbeza. So I think it's such an important thing to look at juga. So I think when you mentioned that you were part of the Undi 18 movement, can you share with us what are the initial pushback that the Undi 18 is having when you trying to propose ataupun cabaran, the setbacks that the Undi 18 have when you trying to propose the law? Jit Lee?
Right. Yeah. Glad to share about that. I'm sure we all read the news where the gazetting of the law was actually pushed back for many months and they even said that it needed more than 2 years for it to be implemented. And that was just nonsense. That was the legal side of it, where and parliamentary side of it, where that was that kept being delayed. However, I feel like to sentiment from the public, that was also a big there was also big pushback from certain groups that kept saying, the youth are not politically literate. They won't be able to make the right decisions, won't be able to make the right choices. And I think that was such a huge. I got so angry at that, because like I mentioned, we didn't invest. Kita tidak memberikan peluang untuk kalangan muda untuk to be involved, in these sorts of things in the first place. We didn't even invest any sort of non-partisan political literacy programs for the youth. And here you are saying that the youth are not ready, the youth are not equipped. This seems to be the problem does not seem to lie with the youth lah. Then the problem seems to lie in the administration, in the education, and the way that youth are just being disrespected in all sorts of manners. So I think those were the two biggest pushbacks. The one was the legislative side, and when someone important out there says that the youth aren't politically literate, they aren't able to make their own decisions. When someone important up there says it, people are going to listen. And then that comes to the second problem of the sentiment with some groups within the rakyat as well. But I'm really glad to say that by the end of last year we actually managed to push it all after two lawsuits. Terdapat satu lawsuit di Kuala Lumpur, satu lawsuit di Sarawak, and after two lawsuits, the one in Sarawak actually won, and in the end, things were pushed to a point where they had to implement it. And in December of last year, the Undi 18 was placed into the law, and now every election after this, 18-year-olds and above can vote, and also you have the automatic voter registration.
Okay, thank you so much Encik Jit Lee. Okay, Cik Tyra, Cik Jit Lee dah ceritakan what is Undi 18 punya setback ketika diorang cuba push for the amendment of the law. Boleh Cik Tyra kongsikan dengan kami what are the challenges that you personally go through when you in the political party? What are the struggle as a Belia when you first starting to join PKR, or like you said just now, your the intersectionality where you said that the men are having more advantages from women in terms of political party. Would you mind sharing on that a little bit more?
Okay, so cabaran yang saya lalui dalam organisasi. Okay, saya rasa cabaran ni it applicable both in NGO ataupun political parties itself. And when I talk about political party, it does not only limited to my organization. I believe it's more like systemic. It involves systemic cultural and education. It many things which are fundamentals. So seperti parti lain dekat Malaysia, keadilan juga begitu. Like I said, this is not just mutually exclusive for keadilan, the establishment and the status quo. I believe that, like I said previously, if you want to be in politics or you want to be in, the sort of whatever social movement, you have to have capital. Doesn't matter if it's social capital or political capital, and definitely economic capital. Because macam saya cakap tadi, only if you have certain economic capital that you can be actively involved in politics ataupun the process of democracy kan. So cabaran-cabaran yang saya lalui tu macam itulah kan, macam wherever you go, like I said, this is not just mutually exclusive for keadilan, it happens everywhere. If it's an UMNO ke BN, you gonna see like anak orang itu, anak orang ini dan sebagainya, and they have more ground and they have more standing in the organisation because their fathers or their mothers or someone. But I'd like to talk about sort of like systemic discrimination against the poor and unable lah here kan. Saya rasa macam tadilah saya sambung lah sedikit apa yang Encik Jit Lee cakap tadi kan pasal representative ataupun the youth representative kan. Saya rasa diskurs youth representative ni dah boleh kita tolak. Bukanlah tolak, maksudnya kita have to go beyond the surface. It's not just about youth representative. For me, macam juga dalam representative wanita, kita dah perlu stop talking about just woman representative. We have to talk about meaningful youth representation ataupun meaningful woman representation. Sebab kalau kita cakap pasal youth ni kan, Najib, one of the most corrupted politician in Malaysia, was a menteri besar for Pahang at the age of 29. So generally, Malaysia doesn't have any problem to employ young people into the position of power. Tapi siapa Najib? Najib adalah anak Tun Razak, bekas Perdana Menteri. Given the situation kepada anak petani ataupun anak orang asing, I'm pretty sure they won't be a menteri besar at the age of 29-year-old. And ini apa yang membuatkan saya marah. Kalau you cakap pasal youth representative, you don't understand the notions and the systemic discrimination that come with it. okay lah kalau kita tengok systemic discrimination kan, macam isu MARA, scholarship dan sebagainya. Siapa yang dapat scholarship MARA? You have certain economic empowerment. You can go to tuition, you can go to good school, you're gonna get sponsor MARA, pergi belajar London. At the end of the day, everything is you were born into the silver platter. It's just basically a smooth sailing journey for you. And sama juga dalam politik pun, dan apa bendanya systemic discrimination ni bukan sahaja berlaku dalam ruang lingkup dalam when it comes to CEO of the company dan sebagainya. It also happens in politics. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that the discourse of youth representative ataupun when it comes to marginalized group representative, it has to be meaningful youth representation. So itu macam cabaran yang I rasa yang generally lah, bukan dalam parti keadilan sahaja, tapi macam the establishment and the status quo that has growing and regress over the years kan. So like for example, macam isu-isu kenapa meaningful representative is very important. Kalau you bagi Najib bekas anak Perdana Menteri jadi Menteri Besar, what does he know about the struggle of orang asli? What does he know about having to live with paycheck to paycheck monthly? What does a privileged person who were born into the silver platter, you were born into 20, knows about having to ride LRT in the morning at 7:30 and coming back home at 6:30, kena ambil anak daripada sekolah dan sebagainya kan. So meaningful representative have to come from the marginalized group, the people who living on a daily basis, and the people who have the same struggle. Because at the end of the day, macam kalau kita tengok harga kenaikan barang dan sebagainya kan, when you have Anwar Musa who wear 8,000 jacket kan, turun pergi tengok harga ayam naik RM8.90. I don't think these people can actually relate to your everyday struggle. So I don't know if this answers your question, tapi dalam organisasi saya dan juga saya rasa macam that's not limited to my organisation, the political capital, the social capital is very important, and we are looking at the chain ataupun the vicious cycle of this kind of people who actually representing you, because at the end of the day there's a systemic barriers for the marginalized group to actually be part of the movement, be the representative to the voiceless out there kan. Macam for example, kalau kita cakap pasal youth ataupun orang muda kan, ada banyak orang-orang muda sekarang ni yang cakap pasal gig economy yang tak dapat benefits yang selayaknya mereka dapatkan. It's about 30% actually our youth yang terlibat dalam gig economy. Tapi adakah isu-isu mereka ni being attention is fully directed to them? Ada banyak isu-isu sebagai contoh petani muda moden tapi tak boleh nak bertani dan sebagainya sebab the land is being acquired by the government. But why are we not paying attention to the youth struggles as well kan? And it seems to be there's only like certain youth punya struggle ataupun movement that is being highlighted ataupun yang popular, and the rest of it are being sidelined. So I think we have to start to talk and to think about that as well. I mean, alongside the challenges that I face in my organization as well, basically, which is the social and economic capital in politics and in the sort of the struggle itself.
Okay, thank you so much, Tyra, for sharing. I really like your point when you say a meaningful youth representation, because the example that you give just now is really amazing. Yeah, for someone to be a menteri, to be a minister, benda tu it's not impossible, tapi it's just when he was elected as Menteri Besar, what can apa yang dia boleh kongsikan, apakah pembaikan yang boleh dilakukan for someone who is not from a certain marginalized group, yang his experience and the experience that the orang yang dia wakil tu amatlah kiranya perbezaan tu antara langit dan bumi. So it's really a good point, Cik Tara, I really like that part. Okay, for you mentioned about the meaningful youth representation. Cik, why do you think, like in Cik Tyra said, why is it so important to have a meaningful youth representation, not only because of someone age, but it is really important to appoint or to have someone who is experienced the struggle or the ones who are able to bring out the voice of the youth in the democracy right now. Kenapa usia bukan saja, the age is not the only factor, but his credential ataupun background tu very important. Cik Jit Lee?
Yes. I think yeah, I totally agree in why this meaningful representation needs to be is so important. And the question is why, right? Why that is important, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I mean, when you have people, when you have youth rising up, it's very easy to for it's very easy to platform anyone, right? Sesiapa nak naik satu pangkat yang lebih tinggi dalam whichever organization. That's not the hardest part. The hardest part is to get people to empathize, and to be on the side of whichever agenda this person has. And if this person has not experienced these things, they do not have that social they do not have that background. They do not like what Miss Tyra said, have never experienced how it's like to live from paycheck to paycheck. It becomes really difficult for the rakyat to empathize. For what's the word? The sort of disparity between what we expect from someone who is supposed to represent us, and what we get is just so huge. So I think this sort of need to empathize with the person is one of the major reasons why we need that meaningful representation. And the other reason being that without this representation, you're really just speaking from whichever person is really just speaking from their own experiences and their own social capital, which do not align with the majority of the others. One big example is we see that in the parliament, the MPs that we have who are in their what's the thing? Yeah, the average age of the MPs in parliament is in the 50s, but the average age of Malaysians in general is in the 30s, and that's just a whole generation of difference in experiences, a difference in lived experiences, and a whole generation in differences of beliefs and stances. And I think that is the other reason why this meaningful representation is so important.
Okay, thank you, Cik J. I think I just wanted to add, when you said about the average age of our MPs and our average age of our rakyat Malaysia is 20 years different. So I think when you have someone who is in their 50s, so when we talk about certain issues like economics, um, untuk menaikkan had minimum gaji is one of the things that was oftenly disputed between them, because they feel like, oh, because I was in their place before, I make less than you, so I think you can survive that. Just because they survived that before, they expect the youth today to survive, but they forgot
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
So always this like, oh, just we can do it. Other people can. In my time, I only earn 500 ringgit, but yeah, but then the food are only like 5-10 cents. But right now is the cost of living is so high, and the minimum, there's always the, until now I don't think there's always an argument about apa tu, menaikkan had minimum gaji is still on disputes, even though I think they have agreed on it, but not all the employees are doing that or enforcing that as well. Yeah, so
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I've even recently seen a certain pharmacy, I won't name, um they said attractive salary, and the salary was 1,500 ringgit. Like that's literally the minimum wage. And I think that is this kind of disparity that we need to tackle when it comes to political involvement, and that's why I think it's incredibly brave of many of the youths who have gone down to actually speak about this, to fight about this.
so yeah, that's really true. I think you and I were part of the for a certain parade that was held during the May Day parade. So yeah, I think I got to see the different marginalized group who was affected. Like Tyra said about, for example, the gig economy workers, the young lawyers, peneroka, farmers who was affected by the different government policy, and they were struggling to make a living as well. So yeah, that's just sharing my experience. And I think before we move on to the next question, I would like to invite anyone from our listeners to share their opinions. If you have any questions to our punya resource person, you can do it now. You can raise your hand. Tak semestinya tanya soalan, or you can share your experience. What do you think about democracy's punya landscape right now? Yeah, so I really encourage our listeners to angkat tangan, you know, oh, okay, we got one, okay. And tolong bagi tahu nama ya. Boleh kenalkan diri dan boleh terus cakap ya.
May I
Yes.
have the floor? Okay.
Yes.
So great points I've heard. I was in and out of the shower, so I really can't listen to everything, but I think I've heard a bit of most of your points clearly. So saya ingat, but why don't saya tinggalkan perakhiran discussion ni dengan kita kena tengok macam mana gerakan belia dan juga anak muda dan senang ceritalah resistance di negara-negara lain, macam mana mereka operate dalam demokrasi diorang, sebab demokrasi diorang pun macam kita juga sedikit sebanyak ada masalah, sedikit sebanyak terjejas dengan kita panggil elite capture. Jadi saya nak kutakan sedikit saja, bila kita sama ada gig workers kita, migrant workers kita, pekerja belia, orang yang baru nak masuk kerja, pelajar-pelajar kita ataupun golongan nak start keluarga, mereka menghadapi masalah, mereka tak ada tempat nak mengadu. Tapi di negara-negara lain, contohnya bila ada Starbucks kan, pekerja Starbucks dekat Amerika Syarikat, mereka mengalami masalah, gaji mereka tak adalah lumayan sangat tapi above average, tapi dia orang punya job security tak ada. Banyak-banyak kalau kita tanya pekerja-pekerja yang low income, dia orang akan kata job gaji tu dah satu masalah dah, tapi disebabkan pekerjaan ni tak bayar banyak upah, this job security memang down. So apa yang pekerja-pekerja Starbucks buat? Mereka buat union. Mereka hantar kad dekat pekerja-pekerja diorang, dekat kawan-kawan pekerja, and then bila diorang dah ready, diorang habaq kat bos diorang ramai-ramai, kami nak buat union election. Di negara-negara lain mereka ada infrastruktur untuk menjalankan benda-benda macam ni, untuk bagi warga kerja berganding bahu, dan menyatakan bargain even bertawar-menawar antara mereka sebagai pekerja dengan golongan bos untuk dapatkan orang kata apa kedudukan ekonomi yang lebih baik, gaji yang lebih tinggi, job yang lebih secure, cuti yang lebih sikit. Semua benda ni ada dekat negara-negara lain. Tapi di Malaysia kita tak ada benda ni. Kita memang deliberately crush benda ni sebagai orang kata apa sebagai kesan daripada golongan kiri diketepikan. Jadi kita tak cakap dah tentang benda-benda macam trade union. Apatah lagi kita nak cakap pasal Labour Party, ya, parti-parti yang represent golongan yang bayar gaji rendah, yang mereka yang datang daripada keluarga miskin. Kita hanya ada dan space resistance dalam negara kita ni lebih kepada macam anak-anak startup dan orang kata apa, saya sendiri macam seperti anak golongan profesional yang ada yang sudah berjaya, ada yang masih lagi tersekat-sekat. Kita sama-sama melihat masa depan kita semakin gelap. Tapi di negara-negara lain mereka ada cara untuk orang kata apa, membina kekuatan dari bawah. Kita kena belajar benda itu. Kita tak boleh jadikan NGO ataupun organising yang kita nak buat sebagai resume refurbish. Itu saja yang saya nak komen. Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih. Cik, nama cik apa cik?
Tak apa, panggil saya just by my Twitter handle.
Encik A lah, saya panggil Encik A.
Okay, terima kasih ya.
Okay, terima kasih Encik A.
Yeah, I have something to
add, boleh?
Yeah, I have something to add to 50 ringgit. Yeah, I think apa yang dia cakap itu memang is very true lah. That we actually need to it does us a lot of good to actually look into apa yang orang yang kalangan belia di negara lain apa yang mereka buat. Like for example, when we're talking about even the Amazon, the company owned by one of the richest people in the world, Jeff Bezos. Recently this year, if you have been paying attention, there was a union that was formed by led by this man called Christian Smalls, and he's not very old. In Malaysian as a Malaysian politician, he would have been considered young. He's in his 30s. So I think that there's all these sort of examples around the world that we really need to pay attention to and learn from. So I think that's a really good point by Mr. 50 ringgit.
And in addition to that kan, kita pekerja-pekerja Starbucks dan pekerja-pekerja Amazon yang cuba bangkitkan semula tradisi kesatuan pekerja labor unions dekat Amerika Syarikat. Labor unions di Amerika Syarikat pun telah dilemahkan juga macam mana kita di Malaysia. Tapi mereka ada infrastruktur untuk naik balik. Dan mereka boleh buat election dan mereka boleh menang. Ada yang menang, ada kalau menang, ada kalah. Kalau dulu ada 0 Starbucks unions dekat Amerika Syarikat, sekarang ada 150 something. Amazon lagi susah lah sebab bangunan-bangunan dia besar dan sedikit, so company boleh buat union busting lagi kuat terhadap pekerja-pekerja dia orang. Tapi pada masa yang sama mereka ni berkata kami mendapat inspirasi daripada politicians macam senator daripada Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Mereka dapat inspirasi daripada Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, wakil daripada New York. Dan ini menunjukkan satu feedback antara golongan belia dan pekerja di luar sistem politik dan juga di dalam sistem politik itu sendiri. Terdapat politician yang mereka tidak fokus kepada quote-unquote corruption sahaja ataupun reformasi semata-mata, tetapi menyatakan polisi-polisi yang menyegarkan jiwa pengundi, membawa pengundi rasa macam sedar terhadap keadaan mereka sendiri dan mereka sendiri rasa syok nak datang pergi mengundi. Bandingkan sekarang dengan presiden mereka sekarang sangat tak exciting, bahkan senyap sunyi apabila hak-hak rakyat Amerika ditarik balik satu persatu. Macam apa yang sedang kalau saya boleh kata lah yang tampaknya sedang berlaku di negara kita dan juga di banyak-banyak negara lain, ya. Kita sedang mengalami satu situasi yang agak buruk di banyak-banyak negara akibat kekurangan pekerja, akibat global supply chain disruption, akibat inflation. So perangai-perangai macam ni akan naik balik dan kita belum ada kekuatan untuk lawan balik, untuk jinakkan balik keganasan-keganasan ini yang akan dilakukan terhadap kita dalam generasi-generasi akan datang. Itu je.
Saya nak tambah sikit apa yang RM50 tadi cakap pasal union ya. Kalau kita tengok union dekat Malaysia ni dah di-neutralize kan di bawah MTUC. Dan MTUC tu kalau kita tahu dia punya association adalah to the International Trade Union Confederation kan. So bila saya cakap tadi pasal economic empowerment, one of my concern is as well union lah. Kalau kita cakap pasal gig workers dan sebagainya kan, macam mana all these workers has been displaced and dislocated and how they are basically, their voice is being sideline kan. So I think yes, it's very important when we talk about that economic empowerment. We must know the condition of the people yang macam live on paycheck to paycheck. So yes, I agree with you, and also like one of the things that I nak buat for AMK Angkatan Muda Keadilan adalah labor division. We really want to look into it, and if there's any way, if there's any structure that we could possibly do for the union, apa yang there is no such association to the trade ataupun trade liberalization, I would definitely want to do that. If it's not within the prerogative of me as someone who is in a political party, I would definitely much more interested in having those meaningful conversation and meaningful representation when it comes to, the basic rights, which is the economic rights that has to do with the livelihood of the young people, of the youth. So thank you so much for bringing it up.
Okay, thank you so much Encik A ataupun Encik RM50 kerana kongsikan pandangan dengan kami. Okey, Encik Tyra ada sebut tadi tentang inisiatif Encik Tyra dalam Angkatan Muda Keadilan tu. Boleh Encik Tyra kongsikan lagi, mungkin ada inisiatif lain ke yang Encik Tyra nak initiate untuk untuk AMK?
Alamak, I didn't plan to sort of like campaign or anything here, but memang saya within my untuk engage dengan gig economics workers. I've been looking into diorang punya sort of like franchise lah, macam ada penghantar and few other things lah. Looking into more in depth macam mana actually kita boleh consolidate, sebab bagi saya it's very important. Macam gig economy ni 25% daripada population, most of us are youth kan. Itu belum lagi kalau kita cerita macam mana brain drain kan. Orang yang buat gig economy ni bukan tak ada pelajaran, they have tertiary education, tapi kenapa dia orang boleh displace sampai macam tu sekali? Because riding motorcycle, sending food and whatsoever gives you more money than being integrated into the formal workplace dekat Malaysia ni sendiri kan. So itu adalah what I have in mind lah. Otherwise macam saya nak juga macam tengok for example like a few groups yang I mentioned tadi, macam young farmers dan sebagainya. It's all about bringing all these marginalized group coming together and about consolidating the marginalized group. I'm not very interested lah. I mean, it's not that I'm not interested lah. I mean, T20 youth, they have their ability untuk suarakan diorang punya concern dan sebagainya. Tapi this marginalized group of youth, I think it's very important to start tapping into them. It's not because we want to win their votes, it's because it's the right thing to do. Those are the things lah yang what I have, and I would like also to engage if any of you are here yang macam it's not very popular ataupun isu-isu yang you bawa, it's not very popular, but when it comes to livelihood, economic empowerment, I'm very much want to tap onto that as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you Cik Tara. Cik Jit Lee, maybe Cik Lee boleh promote SUARA dan maybe encourage them to join you to be part of the part of your organizations ke, what it is to encourage them to be more lebih berani ataupun lebih outspoken untuk menyuarakan isu-isu berkaitan dengan yang berkaitan belia.
Right. Yes. Definitely. Just but truth be told, halaman SUARA ini sekarang, I'm on a bit of a hiatus right now. If you actually go to the page, it is actually, I'm just gonna say it again, at SUARA SUARA_MY. And if feel free to follow it because I do have plans for it coming up. And if I do have plans to also expand the team at some point. So just keep on the lookout if you are interested, because we don't want to just be doing social media work. At some point, we want to move onto the ground and actually act, right? Which is that final part of SUARA. That AU stands for act, and that's where we want to get to. But maybe other than that, perhaps I just want to encourage sikit lah untuk golongan belia yang ingin melibatkan diri dalam politik. And I think one of the most important thing that people need to realize is that anda tidak perlu berhenti kerja atau berhenti sekolah untuk terlibat dalam politik atau terlibat dalam advokasi. I believe that change can be done from different capacities, and you just need to look at which space you're occupying, apakah ruang yang anda duduki, and you can start from there. Like, adakah ia bermula dari dengan membuka perbualan di rumah, like just starting the conversation at home, right? Or adakah ia bermula dengan mempelajari lebih lanjut tentang struktur politik negara kita, tentang negara lain? Are there alternative voting methods that we might need to think about? Are there alternative campaigning methods we might need to think about? And all that sort of learning, because for us to deconstruct, we have to learn how it was constructed in the first place. So I think that is something that's just really, really important. So it's important to be involved in programs and activities that are designed around learning about the system, learning about processes, rather than learning about parties or individuals and all that. Because I'm sure even Mr. Haram will agree that the systems that we build are more robust than any single individual, and that sort of thing will include learning about not just voting, but the history behind it, alternative systems like I mentioned, and different advocacy processes. And for people who are planning, maybe some of you are trying to plan programs around youth democracy. Discussions need to be navigated around the youth's experiences and ideas. So you need to be mindful of the talking points that you use. Are they genuine comments, or are they analysis on the systems, or are you accidentally filling them with repurposed agenda? So just something you have to be really, really mindful about when you craft these sort of programs for the youth. So yeah, one other thing is that politicians or political parties, these things will change, they come and go, but the policies, the dasar yang digubal, they have the lasting effect. So yeah, so don't be afraid if you don't know, like well, which are these political actors, these are different players in the game. Fokus untuk mengenali dan memahami sistem terlebih dahulu. So you can libatkan diri dalam gerakan akar umbi, mobilize, go and organize, read from different sources, learn how to identify bias in media literacy is really, really important. So only once you have established those views on policies, you know who are responsible for them, you are beginning, then you sort of begin to understand how the game is played, and you understand the actors and the players and you start to ask the right questions. So yeah, it's just these three things. Number one, it's to learn then number two is to deconstruct, and number three then to take action. So itulah saja yang aku nak cakap.
Okay, thank you so much Mr. Jit Lee. Untuk Cik Tara, ada apa-apa nasihat untuk diberikan kepada belia di luar sana yang if they are interested to be involved with politics or democracy, what is your advice for them?
Tak adalah advice, but basically if I could share certain things, I would really advise the youth to really read a lot. I think from my previous experience in political and intellectual activism is that we sometimes we know the problems, but I think we have to go beyond that. Right now we have to start to also find the solutions. We have to start finding alternatives, and we have to see what works and what doesn't work. If we understand what doesn't work anymore, yes, there's such work of deconstructing is very important as well, but for certain things we have to start building and understand the issues and understand the objective, and I think along the way be honest and also to keep your integrity intact. I think but also like I agree with what Jit has said. I think it's very important to understand the issues on the ground and do not easily be swayed by populist movement, and to understand not just what but also who and why. Like reading a lot will definitely help you understand what's going on between or just on the surface. And like always, sometimes doesn't matter how honest or how intact your intention is, you have to associate yourself with a good mentor, team, and comrades. So I think that's basically what I have to say about the youth out there. Like I said, I believe in our youth, and I believe that we are aspired, and we have been inspiring to many as well. I understand the political apathy. I understand that because I was there as well. If you don't know, in 2018, I was one of the youth that actually said or agree with Ungi Rosa, because like I really hate it when the options is only between Pepsi and cola. And but I think maybe it's also time for me to sort of like get actively involved and get my hands and feet dirty and start to get, do the grueling work. And I think, yeah, be part of the solution and start thinking about solutions. And I wish I could say to many of us to start being a politician wannabe, but rather, start thinking. Not more objectively, start thinking about the solution of a problem. And in politics, I believe that we have to make more space for policymakers and less space for politicians. And I really hope that we would see the youth who have the best intention and the best interest for the nation, and doing it not because it's popular, not because you're getting traction, or like 50 ringgit said just now, like what startup wannabes and that sort. So yeah, I think doing think as of public or national interest is very important as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much Encik Tyra dan Encik Jit Lee dan juga Encik RM50 kerana menyuarakan pendapat juga ya. Okay, so now for this session we have talk about what is, apa yang dimaksudkan dengan demokrasi, what are the challenges that our narasumber go through in their own respective experience, and it is what in this session juga kita telah highlight what is it important to have a meaningful youth representation, not only just youth representation, because it brings a different meaning. So youth representation, you hire someone based on their age, while meaningful youth representation, you hire them based on their age and also their credential and experience that makes them a suitable person to voice up or to menyuarakan struggles that the peoples that who has voted for them. So that is really important. And juga we talk about the different challenges, that is systematic challenges, and then social and economics for the youth who are having difficulties dalam they wanted to participate in the in the politics or slash democracy, but they are having struggles with their own life, everyday life, because they are basically um, struggling with their jobs and living paycheck to paycheck, so that which might contribute the factor why is there a less participation from Belia in democracy. So I think the suggestion that was said by Encik Jit Lee dan juga Encik Tyra adalah it is important to understand the struggles. Once you have understand the struggle, you learn about the struggles and you build your solution around it. If the solution that for the problem has been, dah ada solution untuk masalah sebelum itu, namun jika solusi itu tidak berkesan ataupun tidak boleh diguna pakai, those solution has to be deconstruct dan juga dibina balik berdasarkan situasi sekarang, bukannya situasi 20 years ago. Dan juga it is important to find alternative dan juga take actions dalam menyuarakan ataupun memberikan solusi terhadap masalah yang dilalui oleh belia dan juga rakyat secara umumnya. So di sini saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Encik Jit Lee kerana sudi menyertai sesi kami pada hari ini. Do you have any last word, Jit?
No, I don't think I have anything else to say. I've pretty much said what I needed to say. But just remember that the youth are not here to play around now. And we got to start listening and platforming the youth and other underrepresented voices to really move ahead, because at this point where else can we go but really to listen to the future of the country, right? It's a bit weird saying that, so I'm also part of the youth, calling myself that as well. But so that's basically it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you Cik Lee. Okay, untuk Cik Tyra ada kata-kata akhir sebelum saya menutup sesi ini.
Terima kasih kepada Telenisa kerana sudi menjemput saya, tapi kita just one last thing lah. Kita kena ingat bahawasanya kalau kita cakap pasal demokrasi, kita jangan buat kesilapan pada tahun 2018 bila pihak-pihak ataupun orang yang kita setuju ataupun parti yang kita support sudah menang di peringkat kerajaan pusat, kita rasa kerja kita dah tamat di situ. Tidak. Because I remember back in 2018 bila Pakatan Harapan menang kerajaan, banyak NGO yang mula tone down dan sebagainya, berhenti kritik dan sebagainya, because you know what, our friends are in the government, we have to stop doing that. Because trust me, democracy does not end in the polling station, polling ataupun votes. It doesn't end there. It's a continuous struggle. And yes, this struggle is our struggle. And please remember that if you are in a position of privilege, speak for the voiceless as well. And again, thank you so much for having me today. And if you guys are interested to collaborate or have any ideas on certain things, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll try my best to, to accommodate and to collaborate with any one of you here. Thank you so much.
Okay, terima kasih Encik Tyra. Okay, dengan itu saya secara rasminya menutup sesi Tanya Telenisa pada hari ini. Saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada pendengar-pendengar kerana sudi menyertai sesi kami pada hari ini. Okay, sekian saja daripada saya, daripada Klinik Bantuan Guaman Telenisa. Assalamualaikum dan selamat petang semua. Terima kasih.
Thank you everyone. Bye.
Bye.